It's Tuesday, November 15th, 2022. I am in this pattern. Um, I am watching, there's a few things that have happened. I'm watching CBS mornings. There is the episode from yesterday, which was E226, which was Monday, November 14th, 2022. Um, They have two pieces. One towards the end at 1.30.34. Tony DeCoble comes out with this saying that he was reading Apple News. Now, for me, Apple happens to have great significance because they refer to the state where I am as the Big Apple. Um, they also refer to New York. I mean, New York has this special feature in it, which I don't know how that ever came about, but it also has the UN. So it has this national component in New York. It also has a state inside this territory called the United States of America. And there's some component of, I don't know whether it's business, office, political, research, governance. There's a whole lot of words I could use, but I'm not real clear on a set standard of textbook on the subject that's already been agreed upon. So he says in this Apple News that there's something called the Great Filter Theory about intelligent life in the universe, which I thought was a wonderful way to start this conversation piece or this mention or document on my own behalf of where I'm at and what's going on. And then at the beginning of the same episode, if I then go from the Great Filter, um, if I go to the timepiece 3.45, Biden flew to or is in Bali, Indonesia with Xi Jinping, um, which is China's president, and they sat down for something called Red Lines. Um, I noticed visually they must have put a lot of thought and effort into this meeting. I just paused and appreciated great moments in time with great men that I did not realize just in the moment, which seemed so unscheduled, who they were and how the rest of the world looks upon them as chosen representatives for something larger that's going on. Um, so in this picture of just the two of them at the dais, they sat across from one another. Only the two presidents were unmasked. The rest of the dais was masked. In between them, they had a garden or a visual reference of a garden, symbolic of life, symbolic of nature, symbolic of the planet, an anchoring piece amongst two very powerful men. Um, and then it says, although you cannot hear them speak because, of course, they are the two most powerful men in that room at that point. It says U.S. priorities, and it went through some points. Now, I find it interesting. President Biden's been in office for so long, and it took until this point for them to actually meet for the first time. I'm not quite sure what that's about. But then if I go to the episode on Tuesday, which is today, 11/15/22, it's E227 as a reference, same CBS mornings. They at 9.40 speak about Ukraine war and the G20 agenda. Now, I did not know what a G20 was, but they explained, or they simply made a statement saying that it's the 20 largest economies in the world, which I thought was very helpful for OCD to orient, center, and direct one's attention to the key point. Um, they also, on this episode 227, mention at 49.34, back in, I believe it's a states reference, they mentioned this saying or phrase that they have here, which is that you can't take it with you. More of a domestic thing, I would think. And they bring up this Jeff Bezos, who's this philanthropic. He has a philanthropic vow. They claim he's the fourth richest man, 120 billion, according to Bloomberg. And he has something, he has not made this thing called a giving pledge, which is a promise to donate most of his wealth to charitable causes. I thought that was interesting. I've heard of something called the giving tree, according to the Episcopalians. And it's a children's book that they put to the public in New York. I don't know if it's in other states. And then I think it has a green cover on it. And then there's the Jesse tree, which takes care of other internal mechanics, I suppose. And I can only imagine, I saw that Nadler started his career in 1992 when he was standing next to Governor Hochul. Somebody mentioned that on the evening news. I thought that interesting with the Solomon and the IUA of the underwriters. The International Underwriters Agency has a mural with 1992 reference on it. And it has Solomon reference, which I thought was interesting in this area. For what troubles you or what keeps you safe. So that's interesting. Notice that I've been able to put together while here. Lewis this morning, lastly, had show business up on the screen with a comedian called Dave Chappelle, which I've heard in passing references, but I have not watched his career. Again, I think back to that quote from Gorbachev, who says, if I am so busy managing my own area, how can I be watching over and following along with somebody else's? And that was to an American Girl, which I thought was really interesting. So I'm watching this Dave Chappelle on this Saturday Night Live piece. He did an opening act, and it seemed very noir. It seemed very dark comedy in the seriousness and the realism in how they've performed over their careers and in the same city that I've been trapped within this, whatever, feels like entrapment by I don't know what. And so he was saying that the difference between a millionaire and a billionaire is the millionaires wear chains, whereas the billionaires do not. I don't know if that's where once you get to billionaire level, you have to do that giving tree, but who's keeping them in check? Then it goes back to this argument that they speak of on the television of, do you give it straight out to the US Treasury directly and then have the people decide. But that seems like a larger fight I'm just not clear on at the moment from where I sit. Um, and then Dave Chappelle did a spoof on, that's a spoof with an F, on this House of Dragons and Game of Thrones. And he has this character that comes up with these really white lips, and he had a crack pipe, and he was itching. So that really frightens me, especially with what's going on with, Janet Yellen was talking about diesel fuel in Diesel, Diesel, and then there's the fossil fuel in the foreign whatever SSEL. And so the effects of it, like I'm running, I'm not smoking crack, but I'm running next to these cars on this highway, and like I don't know the studies of long-term effects of crack or the chemical components in the air exchange, but I have noticed running and even walking out on the streets of New York, my lips, I've gotten white, like chalky sense, hard to breathe. My legs at times don't want to work. Having really horrible health paradigm shifts since I'm back in Bayside. Also, yesterday I'm running, but it's this really, and I go by the NYPD camera and I sign specifically with my weird hand motion, so they can see my pace. It's almost like it's it feels like cardiac, like the heart is not pumping properly. I don't know if that's because I'm back into a degradate of not enough blood in my system at volume, but when I'm running, I cannot feel a strong pulse. But yet there's other times where if I lay on the floor upside down, I have a very strong pedal pulse. So it's this weird, I don't know if, I mean, they gave me a blood transfusion, but then the results on the paperwork keep coming back that my volume's increasing in blood, but yet my cardiac muscle is not pumping. I can't feel my heart pretty much. I don't feel it at all. It feels like I don't even have a heart. It feels like I have no pulse. I mean, as I go through, I mean, I'm animated, I'm speaking it, but it's like the walking living dead is what it feels like. Um, and I'm not sure if it is, I think it's something biochemical, but I also think it has something to do with the quality of air outside, and the long-term effects of these really dangerous chemical combinations and the automobile and the combustible engine. Um, I'm not choosing. I'm in the city. I have no money. I have no way out. I'm trapped here. But yet there's these UN participants that have been allowed into New York by some gracious host of I don't know who. And I know there's much wiser, smarter people, of chemical engineers and of these, um, chemical engineers and that have done government research, all sorts of things. But yet it's not the government, all with all the government research and time that they've had to develop these whatever, it's only gotten worse. Um, and then it has cascading effects for faraway places. Um, so that's really frightening. And then I'm thinking of Jeff Bezos and choosing the fourth richest man and his association is to this Amazon, which is the AMA, and zone. I know that that was really important to Jenny when she was here when we were little. I didn't understand fully at the time. And so that symbolic gesture that they put up on the TV, I did not lose its symbolism on myself. So I'm going to put up this Tony DeCopel mention of eating blueberries for brain health, and then how he talks about this intelligence, this great filter.
So this weekend, while Teddy was watching a movie and Eloise was napping, I was staring at my phone. I looked at Apple News.
Yes.
They have the most popular stories on there, and the first one was about brain-boosting foods.
Okay.
Blueberries on there, so I ate some blueberries.
Yes.
And then
Boosted the brain.
And boosted the brain up. And then I read the second most popular story in Apple News, which was a paper from scientists at NASA at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
Okay.
Proposing that the reason why we have not seen intelligent life out there in the universe is because of something called the Great Filter. The idea is that there is some kind of inherent dysfunction in all intelligent life that makes that life eradicate itself before it gets to the point where it can go anywhere. So the paper is about how we avoid becoming victims of the Great Filter so we can explore the whole universe. It encourages a moment of introspection here on planet Earth about how far we've come and what it will take to go even further.
Meantime, pass the blueberry. I do like Apple News too.
Right at 3:22, same episode, it goes to this meeting. And I also noticed on President Joe Biden's side of the table what the United States of America looks like from over the garden and on the opposite side of the table. It did not lose me in its symbolic representation as well.
The news, as we always do, and the news today is a landmark meeting between two of the world's most powerful leaders, President Biden and China's President Xi Jinping. They're holding talks in Indonesia this morning.
For myself, this is the garden. I thought that this was a wonderful addition. I really do.
Ahead of the upcoming G20 summit. Mr. Biden, for his part, is hoping he can press the Chinese leader on a range of issues, everything from Taiwan's future to Russia's war in Ukraine, also North Korea's nuclear ambitions. And we find our Nancy Cordes in Bali this morning, traveling with the president. Nancy, good morning.
Good morning, Tony. And the two men clearly have a lot to discuss here in Bali because they have been meeting for nearly 2 hours now. President Biden says they're looking to set down some red lines after trading warnings, accusations, and threats for 2 years.
Mr. President, do you trust President Xi, sir?
The leaders of the world's two largest economies sat at long tables facing each other and acknowledged the frosty relationship.
We share a responsibility, in my view, to show that China and the United States can manage our differences.
President Biden has described China as the biggest challenge to international order. The two nations at odds over trade, technology, Chinese spying, human rights, and China's growing aggression towards Taiwan.
Now, the clip that I had just shown was from Monday, November 14th. That was one meeting. Today, and it's a completely different episode reference from where I'm able to access it. And then today's broadcast showed a different format. It's the G20, which are the 20 most powerful economies, which is now on Tuesday, November 15th, 2022. And so this is episode 227.
Its next steps.
And this is another person that at the time I did not know or what channel, or how this professional showbiz works. Um, and I've met some of their most highly respected, which of course I respected in the moment, but not until obviously I started watching the news program did I realize just how many of them I've actually met in the field.
A lot of people evaluating. We'll see what happens tonight. Thank you, Major. Russia's war on Ukraine dominated today's G20 summit talks. President Biden is meeting with other world leaders in Indonesia. Delegates discuss whether Ukraine should seek a peace deal at this time. Nancy Cordes is in Bali, not a bad place to be, traveling with the president. Nancy, good morning. I know there's a lot of work going on.
There is, Gail. This summit is a gathering of the world's 20 largest economies. And so, as you might expect, they have a lot of influence in world affairs. And so, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed this group by video, and he urged them not to ask him to compromise with Russia at this time. He compared Ukraine's recent liberation of the city of Kherson to D-Day. He said it could be a turning point in this war. And pointedly, he referred to the gathering here as the G19 instead of the G20, meant as a snub to Russian President Vladimir Putin, who chose not to attend this gathering.
Now, I will say that I saw on I think it was the nightly news, I went back to try to find the reference and it was taken off of my machine. But they did show that there was an actor, I call it Hollywood, Sean Penn, who was married to Madonna at some point. He met with President Zelensky and gave him an Oscar and said that he could hold on to it until things had whatever. I was just in observance of the motion. I can only fathom at this point.
Now, in an interview, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen told me she believes the Chinese, who are also here, are getting closer to condemning Russia's invasion. I also asked her about the global shortage of diesel fuel and what it could mean for America. Do you believe that the U.S. will have enough diesel fuel to make it through the winter?
Well, hopefully, I believe there will be, but the East Coast really faces some shortages and low inventories. So we're keeping a close eye and monitoring that.
It seems like everybody is so concerned about these shortages, which I understand. It's just that when my lips are turning white and my heart is no longer felt beating in my chest and my legs are having trouble with movement, and I should not be in a diseased state. I'm only 44. I should be in perfect peak physical fitness. If I want to go for a run, my body should work. And there's this toxic smog that goes on with an industry that is very important with supply chain mechanics, except I don't know, again, at quantity and quality, and could it be more efficient and less environmental pollutants that are taxing the human population without, it doesn't feel like there's any reparations. It doesn't, I mean, if anything, even for saying such, I feel like I've been, like when your reputation precedes you, almost as if there's a section of the population somewhere in the world that already knows your entire life story before you've even lived through that moment. And then they occlude you because of who you are to become or what you are tasked with by some matrix in things that are really hard to explain in quantum theory and string and so on and so forth, and larger area management and nano management. And then parts of the system start collapsing and actually going after you for things you haven't even done yet. I mean, it's very dangerous, and it's also incredibly unfair, especially since parts of it are so required for what needs to be really addressed without certain hot spots or hot buttons taking offense or trying to hurt the people that have no other choice at this point. Now here's the piece about Jeff Bezos.
Goes
Yeah,
wait,
so great. Katie Seagal was there.
Yeah,
Faustina
so
was
David.
there.
So what a beautiful tribute to her daughter.
Really,
By
really,
every-
really was.
yeah.
Wishing her all
Yes,
the best.
we are.
All right, you know the phrase, you can't take it with you?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, it looks like Jeff Bezos, he is the world's fourth richest man. He seems to agree with that. Amazon's founder says he will give away the majority of his fortune during his lifetime. He has a net worth of $124 billion, according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. Bezos says he wants to devote his wealth to fighting climate change and supporting those who can unify the people in the face of social and political divisions. In their first joint interview, Bezos and his partner.
Now, I find that so interesting because it looks like at some level there is such opportunity there. But what happens is, in the real world, that's all I get. I don't know anybody who knows Jeff Bezos. And the people that I have met, for me, it was random selection, like I'm going into some office event at the firm that seems so ordinary. And then when it's over, I don't have these maintained contacts or ways of contacting these individuals. Besides the fact I also, in such an individual basis, I wouldn't know what to say or how to fit or how to construct it. I know there are people much smarter than myself inside of something called an intelligence community. I just don't know outside of that phrase, that paraphrase of intelligent community. I don't know how they organize themselves. I don't know what they're called. I don't know how they organize in order to interact with just random participants. I don't know if it's some form of higher order selection. I don't know. I've had it where they've come looking for me, and some meetings go very well. And then there's others where I don't have words for what happened because I don't know.
Lauren Sanchez told CNN they're trying to figure out the best way to donate all of his millions.
That building Amazon was not easy. It took a lot of hard work, a bunch of very smart teammates, and I'm finding, and I think Lauren's finding the same thing, that philanthropy is very similar.
Now, is he speaking on behalf of the entire doctor community? I'm just curious. At AMA, that seems like American Music Awards, or is that the American Medical Association and then the zone that it covers? Because that seems to tie into the whole government research thing that we're all supposed to be benefiting from because the government already knows, the government's already done the research, the government's already invested with whatever our ancestors did before we got here. They already have it, they already built it, or they were in the process of building it. But it seems like it's grown in some fashion that now certain parts are hard to scale back because people have grown so wealthy and grown other appetites.
Not easy. It's really hard, and there are a bunch of ways I think that you could do ineffective things too. So we're building the capacity to be able to give away this money.
Bezos has not signed a giving pledge. That's the promise that hundreds of the richest people in the world have made to donate most of their wealth to charitable causes.
But he's made it clear he wants to give most of his wealth away during his lifetime.
He does. I should point out, though, not to be the Debbie Downer here, but that there are some 10,000 employees that will be that are set to be laid off, and of course, he could use that money to help those people. There's been a lot of questions around those workers who helped him build that wealth.
The other thing about charitable giving from these super rich billionaires and so forth is if you're having trouble figuring out where to give it, you could write a check to the Treasury, and then we as a country, as a democracy, could decide how to spend it. After all, the internet was built.
But then do you trust
The internet was built by taxpayer dollars. It's government research. I mean, like, he's a billionaire.
where the money is going?
Yeah.
No, exactly. But that's the system we're in.
I hear you.
Allegedly,
Yeah.
that's the system we're in.
I hear you.
So when you take private assets and then you plow it into whatever you care about,
Of course.
it's not really a democratic process.
Of course.
It's a controversial thing these days. More so, people are kind of waking up to it.
Huh.
We got richer people than ever, and they've got more influence than ever. Is that what we want to be doing?
Well, he
It's
just
a
gave
kind of way to
$100
think
million
about
to
it.
Dolly Parton last year. He gave
That's right.
$100 million to Van Jones, no strings attached.
We have a
To
government.
distribute how you feel best to do.
Right.
Right, but that's
Not for the
individuals.
government idea.
Yeah, what's best for the country is
I think it's you can have those two thoughts, right? You can say this is a wonderful thing that he's doing to pledge to give away his billions of dollars, and also understand that he made that wealth off the backs of people who've worked really hard, and some now are going to lose their.
I say take
I'm
care
not
of
even
those
saying
people.
that. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that we.
It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole Cattaruzza. They also yesterday had this Yellowstone reference about some governor of Montana and something about hillbillies. The only thing I think of is the Hill is usually Washington, and that's where they do a lot of the billing to whatever is making a whole lot of money off the backs of the taxpayers. And there's some kind of weird integral cycle there, which I don't necessarily want to get into. But I did notice their television say it without saying it kind of a thing. Like, what could the backstory possibly be? Where are they going with this? I'm going to try to cue that up real quick. It says Yellowstone premiere breaks records.
Is that what it is?
No, I remember.
Okay, Gail.
I remember from Rich class.
You used to have a first boyfriend.
Jeff McHale did.
All right, John Tower, senior broadcast producers in my ear. Move on, Vlad. Move on.
Okay.
Now to another highly anticipated premiere, season 5 of Yellowstone, the most watched show on cable TV last season. So in the 2-part premiere, John Dutton, played by Kevin Costner, returns as the family patriarch. He won the race for governor of Montana, but get this, he hates being the governor of Montana. And as news spreads of Dutton's new title, it's stirring up even more trouble for him and his family. Take a look.
His father's the governor. He'll be next. This should be the happiest day of his life. So why isn't he smiling?
Get Sarah Atwood out here.
You sure?
We're taking the gloves off, Ellis. I'm tired of playing with these hillbillies.
Oh, right.
What kind of hillbillies?
Yellowstone airs Sunday nights at 8 on Paramount Network, which is part of the same parent company as CBS. So
So it's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.